The reason I got into seeking to help restore survivors of human trafficking was we were overseas for 18 years, as I mentioned. We were in Asia and Eastern Europe during that time. And we ran into a lot of human trafficking. It was very blatant, it was very in your face, it was very aggressive. There was systemic corruption. The authorities often were in on it with the traffickers and others. And it was just kind of raw and in your face and aggressive and protected. And it was a very daunting, massive, ugly thing. And I remember thinking, this is so big and so difficult, I could never do anything to really have an impact and make a difference. After those 18 years, we returned to the States, and I was shocked to find out that even here in the Midwest, where we're headquartered, we had a big problem with human trafficking as well. So as we kind of dove into that, trying to find out how we could be of some help, what we discovered was that the big missing gap, right? If you were going to do a SWOT analysis or a gap analysis for a business plan or for any other initiative, the opportunity, the need, and the big missing piece was long-term restorative care for survivors of human trafficking that's residentially based. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's expensive. It's very difficult. It requires quite a bit of resourcing of persons and expertise and staff and volunteers and support. And so not a lot of people get into that. My name is Rodney Hammer. I'm the founder and president of ReHope. We restore survivors of human trafficking in long-term residential safe homes.
Love it. Love it. Excellent. Okay, and then the rest of this will go pretty seamless. So, what we like to do is like to get a little bit of background on our guests as well. So we like to start off right at the very beginning. So we like to ask. Everyone gets asked the same question, and that is, what was your dinner table growing up as a child? What was your dinner table like growing up as a child?
We at the dinner table growing up did not have any exotic foods. We were a meat, potatoes, beans, and peanut butter kind of household, bologna. But we had enough to eat. We were very active, and everybody was required to be at the dinner table. And we had some good conversation, and my mom tried hard to keep up with my brother and I's appetite.
Love it, love it. Do you remember any favorites from growing up? Any favorite foods or anything like that?
Yeah, so I mentioned bologna and peanut butter, but our favorite dinner probably was the pot roast. The old classic roast with veggies and potatoes out of the oven. That was a Sunday favorite. My mom made a really mean lasagna, so we ate well. We didn't have
Love it,
a lot of other stuff, but they always made sure we had some good food on the table.
love it, love it. And we'll get into how you got into ReHope here in a second. But were you influenced? Did you have any entrepreneurial influences or anything like that, would you say, growing up at all, or was this something that you kind of just jumped into?
In regard to entrepreneurship, I guess I've always been a little bent towards being a starter, an initiator of new things. I've done that in terms of ministry, in terms of not for profit, in general. Started a trucking company along the way that didn't do real well. But I've always had an interest in starting things, catalyzing new things, whether it was within an existing organization or whether it was starting from scratch.
Got it, got it. And did you do the whole college thing, that typical growing up, or did you start building things, sort of right from the get-go?
I did go to college at Baylor University. I had a very, I'd say, traditional educational path, but always had this heart for starting new things, improving things, coming up with new approaches to doing things. So kind of always had that entrepreneurial bent.
Love it, love it. What were some of the things that you saw? Is it actually, before we get to that, is ReHope, is this and I know you're just going through the rebrand of that. Is this your first, sort of, I guess, foundation or you know, way to give back to the organization or give back to the community, I guess. Is this your first go at that?
No, my wife and I served internationally for 18 years, and
Wow.
in two different countries. Well, actually, a cluster of countries in Asia, in Southeast Asia, and before that in China. We actually started local branches of NGOs or not-for-profits. We created one from scratch, and then we expanded two others into new areas. So those were ways we could help contribute to the community and bring services to places and people that lack that.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So that obviously over that course of 18 years, you really, I'm sure, learned a lot of the ins and outs on how to run these types of organizations. What would you say are some of the, I guess, the things that maybe people might not necessarily know about running, a not-for-profit organization? Is there anything that comes to mind that people may not necessarily?
I think the not for profit realm attracts people with a big heart and attracts people with a zeal for an issue or for underserved populations. And the surprising part is you have to take that zeal, that passion, that heart, and wet it with some sound entrepreneurial and business principles. You need some systems. You need some systems for support and for executing. And so I tend to lean more naturally toward the creative, the catalytic, the new ideation, but I've had to learn a lot about the execution side, about the system side that you need to go together with that creative piece.
Yep, yep. And what were some of those things that you struggled with, like that execution side of things? Like where did you find that you were um, having to plus up or learn a little bit more?
So having a vision and a broad strategic vision comes a little more naturally to me, but having the disciplined focus to execute, not be all over the map, not
Yeah.
constantly trying new things, not constantly what's the next thing, what's the next thing, having the follow through, having a system in place to see that the follow through is there, that the services that you envision and that you develop are done well. And that takes a lot of work. The administrative side, to support those things, from the accounting to the supply chains to
Mhm.
logistics to supervision, the hiring and onboarding and supervision of staff, the recruiting and the deploying of volunteers. All of those things conceptually can come easily to an entrepreneur. Hey, we could do this, we could get people to do that. But having the discipline to execute, to focus, to bring people along, to help them know how to be a part, the supervision, the administrative, those all took a lot of learning and a lot of growth. Still trying to grow in those respects.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of those things that, there's always better ways to do things, and you're always learning and always evolving. So, I personally feel like you'll probably never stop learning and never stop learning different ways to be able to do things and administer things there. So talk a little bit about what ReHope is and what it does.
ReHope is a 501c3, to use U.S. language, tax exempt, not for profit. We are faith based and we restore survivors of human trafficking, adult women, and then children, meaning both boys and girls. We were formerly known and founded as Restoration House of Greater Kansas City, but now we're looking to expand not only our impact and our effectiveness, but our reach as well. We had established kind of a social enterprise, a little micro enterprise called ReHope and ReHope Market and Cafe to sell products made by survivors as well as do the coffee shop type thing.
Hmm.
And we've decided now that ReHope is clearer about what we do. It's a lot simpler and easier to remember. It's not geographically bound. And it talks about how we bring hope to those that have become hopeless, have become enslaved, give them an opportunity to have a new life. So we do that primarily through long term residential recovery homes for both adult women as well as girls and boys. We have an adult women's campus at 17 acres that we're expanding. Right now we have 18 bed capacity in two different residences on that property, and we're adding a third tiny cottage community, a transitional living community for women in that program as well. And then we have a separate campus for children, a 6 acre campus. And we have opted for a rural model, if you will. We want to be within an hour's drive of jobs and medical care and legal help and other kinds of expertise. But we want to be out in a little more of a pastoral setting, a peaceful, healing environment. We call it the farm. We have goats, we have chickens, we have a garden. We have room to be outside, to enjoy nature, to not be crowded, and not be pressed by some of the issues they're coming out of.
Hmm. Yeah, that sounds like an amazing campus there. What made you get into this, in the first place? I mean,
Yeah.
what was the catalyst that called you toward this?
The reason I got into seeking to help restore survivors of human trafficking was we were overseas for 18 years, as I mentioned. We were in Asia and Eastern Europe during that time. And we ran into a lot of human trafficking. It was very blatant, it was very in your face, it was very aggressive. There was systemic corruption. The authorities often were in on it with the traffickers and others. And it was just kind of raw and in your face and aggressive and protected. And it was a very daunting, massive, ugly thing. And I remember thinking, this is so big and so difficult, I could never do anything to really have an impact and make a difference. After those 18 years, we returned to the States, and I was shocked to find out that even here in the Midwest, where we're headquartered, we had a big problem with human trafficking as well. So as we kind of dove into that, trying to find out how we could be of some help, what we discovered was that the big missing gap, right? If you were going to do a SWOT analysis or a gap analysis for a business plan or for any other initiative, the opportunity, the need, and the big missing piece was long-term restorative care for survivors of human trafficking that's residentially based. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's expensive. It's very difficult. It requires quite a bit of resourcing of persons and expertise and staff and volunteers and support. And so not a lot of people get into that. And so we do both adults and children. But that's where we saw, okay, there's this gargantuan gap that's not being met. And we felt led to jump into that gap to mobilize people. And what we learned was you can help change the lives and save the lives of victims of human trafficking by pulling together, by establishing safe homes, by engaging people in this need. It's a very practical, though challenging and difficult work. It's a very tangible, practical thing that can be done if you take the time and build the networks to address it and learn what trauma-informed care and trauma therapy and these other rather advanced things, the professionals that are needed. You have to learn those things. But we found out that was the gap. That was the big missing piece. We felt led to address it, and then we're in our ninth year. We opened in 2015 with our first home. We spent a year and a half studying the issue, finding out what the need was, and then began rallying people around this need for long-term residential restorative care.
Hmm. Hmm. And what would you say are some of the results that you've been able to realize since opening up a number of years ago?
So as I mentioned, it's definitely a learning, difficult process. But
Yeah.
what we've learned was we've kind of refined into our approach. One was that we needed a rural model. That there are things that, of course, that need to be done in the heart of the cities. But if you want to do the long-term restorative care work, we need to get outside. So we found places where we could do that, places that we could afford, and then we kind of piece by piece develop those capacities, those facilities. But what we've been able to see is not just an expansion of facilities and capacity, but we're also gaining a lot of learning and knowledge and partnering with high level trauma therapists, psychiatrists, and others. We do a lot of loving on folks, unconditional love, providing a healing, peaceful environment, providing the housing and the food and the gardening and the resources and the therapeutic activities. But one of the things we learned was if we don't help them overcome at a really advanced level their complex chronic PTSD and other traumas, then we haven't really set them up for success. We might have got them safe and stable, but we really haven't set them up for success long term. So the other thing we've done is we've elongated the program. Now we go up to 3 years. So obviously the adults are here voluntarily. They can come and go as they please. But we found that by elongating the process, by dealing on a deeper level clinically with the trauma that they've experienced, as well as wrapping around the love and the peace and the healing and the resources, it gives them a much better chance at success in the long run. They have to not only be safe and stable, but then they have to develop both job and educational
Hmm.
skills that they've been deprived of in the past. And then they also have to build a resiliency, an ability to overcome that trauma, manage it, and even move past it. So they go from victims to survivors to thrivers.
Hmm.
Just recently, we've had a handful of women graduate from the 3 year program. We throw a party whenever we can, right? I think that's a key for anything in life. Celebrate the little things and the big things. It's very affirming. It's very encouraging. It brings people along. They see, tangible, real results of lives changed, lives impacted. One of the ladies told we have an all-female staff, right, that do the direct services, and then people like myself, we may raise funds, we raise awareness, we mobilize people. But one of the ladies told me at a dinner that we threw for everybody in a party we were having, 2 years ago I was eating out of dumpsters, I was being exploited on the street. I was doing drugs to medicate the pain. I was being abused and used and bought and sold. And now I got my high school diploma. I bought a car because we don't charge them, so that when they do start working, they save all their money,
Hmm.
and so they can save up money so they don't have those vulnerabilities anymore. We see women getting certified nurses assistant certifications, culinary chef certifications, GEDs and high school diplomas. We've got two women right now working on their bachelor's degree, and that's part of the reason we want to give them enough time so that they can make these progressions. So they can have mentors. They can learn life skills, job skills. They can get certifications in education. And I tell them, we will help you find the resources and the scholarships to do as much study and as many degrees as you want to do. You want to learn how to code software? We're going to bring people alongside to teach you how to code software. You want to learn business? The coffee shop business, the accounting side of it, the entrepreneurial skills. We've got a couple gals, they've got a real head for business. And we have some other really creative, and they've done some amazing things in developing these survivor made products that we sell. They're gorgeous, they're custom, they're handmade, and they're beautiful things. And even that has a wonderful therapeutic effect. So we have little goats and chickens and chores on the farm and things to do. So, it all has kind of a wrap around what do you like? What are you good at? What do you want to pursue? What are you discovering that you could do, that you want to try? And we're going to help them have that opportunity. It's really,
Yeah.
it's really awesome.
That's amazing. And I can imagine how rewarding that is, taking
Yeah, it
someone
is.
from, from that point of just despair and I'm not worth anything to
Yes.
taking them into where they are today and providing that self-worth really.
Yeah, it is beautiful. We had two women 2 weeks ago that completed their peer support specialist certification, which is a state of Missouri and other states have it certification where somebody that's come through like a recovery program or something can be licensed as somebody that's passed the test and done the study, developed the skills to be then a help to somebody else that's coming along, behind them. And we hired two of those women on staff that came through our program, and we had a big party for that too.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Um, if how do you identify, like you said that things were when you were in Southeast Asia, they were in your face, very very apparent what was going on. Are there kind of telltale signs that I think the majority of our listeners are here in the States, but telltale signs that you can tell that something is going on or something to look for. So maybe if there is somebody who needs help,
Yes.
how you can identify what might be going on.
Yeah, so there's some common patterns. So there's a few things you can look for, but first of all, you'd want to have to kind of subdefine the categories. So you've got in human trafficking, you have primarily two main areas: sex trafficking and labor trafficking. So if it was labor trafficking, somebody was by force, fraud, or coercion was made to work for virtually nothing or nothing, enslaved in a sense, in a restaurant or in a strip club or in an agricultural setting or a casino or something like that, and they were being labor trafficked. A common thing in both kinds of trafficking is somebody that's clearly under the control of another and they're not allowed to speak for themselves. Somebody that lives where they work, right? So I'm not talking about a workaholic. I'm talking about a cluster of women living where they work, not allowed to speak for themselves. Um, More men are labor trafficked than women, and a lot more women are sex trafficked than men or boys and girls. There are some telltale signs of tattoos. Like if you see tattoos that are like dollar signs, a crown, daddy's whatever. These are a barcode. Unfortunately, is sometimes done. They traffickers often brand to show
Mhm.
ownership and to remind the person that they're under their control. And by the way, people often ask, why don't they just walk away, run away? Well, they are controlled by emotionally, physically, by massively negative, violent means when necessary to control their behavior. There's trauma bonding that goes on. They're led to believe that they couldn't possibly make it without the trafficker. And so those kinds of control signs, some tattoos, some odd relationships of older to younger, um, those are some of the things that you can see if you're paying attention. I know one of the things I learned was most people are proud of their tattoos, right?
Mhm.
And so you could just say, "Hey, that's a cool tattoo. What's that about?" And if it's normal, they'll just tell you. Or they might say it's none of your business. But generally, if you say, "Hey, that's a cool tattoo. What is that?" "Oh, well, my uncle is so and so, and I love him so much. He helped raise me, and that's his name, or that's my boyfriend, or that's my girlfriend, or that's my team, or that's whatever." But
Mhm.
if you see some of these kind of tattoos, they seem odd. They don't want to talk about it. If something seems really out of whack, somebody seems very disturbed, unable to speak for themselves, maybe not allowed to interact with you. If you do have a chance, if you're in the healthcare field, if you're in the legal field, if you're in the law enforcement field, if you're in hospitality services in a hotel, we had a staff member that used to work at hotels, and you see these things. For children, the sudden presence of money, new clothes, new tattoos, older boyfriends. They're a minor, and the boyfriend is an adult. A very simple diagnostic question is, "Are you okay?" Now, they won't often respond with "No, I'm not," but sometimes they will. Then you can follow up. You can call 911. You can dial the National Trafficking Hotline. You can do those. You can do those kinds of things. Um, you can try to get somebody help if they do respond to you. The other thing is, if you treat people like they're invisible or like they're scary, then they don't ever get help. But
Mhm.
if you think in terms of this is a human, somebody's daughter, somebody's granddaughter, somebody's son or daughter, and I would want them to reach out to mine. If you can think in terms of the humanity of it, not the ugliness of it or what's put off looking to you, and focus on the humanity. Are you hungry? Are you okay? I've had so many survivors tell me it stuck out to them when somebody just humanized them, saw them, recognized them, spoke to them. And even if it didn't happen that day, it sowed this seed of there are people that are not here to exploit me and abuse me. There are people that care.
Yeah, yeah, and I can even say that that probably goes for a lot of people today, right? Social media and all of the digital components of our lives today, right? It's not real connections, but when you can make that that human connection and identify where people might need help, incredibly powerful. Um, I can imagine that a lot of these situations that these people are in. Um, could be dangerous too, right? Where there's these people that are controlling them and they're obviously not great people. What are there like is there like a process that they would go through, like if they feel like they're going to be hurt, you know how what would be the right way to be able to approach them and I guess get them out of a situation like that? I mean, is it just calling 911 and hoping that that person who's controlling them doesn't show up, or what's the best way to be able to kind of handle that tactfully so that you
Yeah.
can minimize that?
So generally speaking, you and I and the general listener are not going to be able to perform the rescue.
Yeah.
And it's really not advisable to try unless you're specially trained or you're attached to another group that's specially trained. But what you can do is you can report the situation, you can express humanity. I'll give you a couple of examples. So, if you're in the healthcare field, the law enforcement field, medical, hospitality, travel, transportation, those are all arenas in which people may frequently run across somebody who's being trafficked. So, educating yourself on the signs, but also then who do I call? Uh, Going online to the Polaris website and getting the information on the human trafficking hotline, finding out who in your state or your city has an anti-trafficking unit in law enforcement, and learn to specifically what you should say if you call 911, or these other connections that you can make, try to get somebody help. Most of the time, most of us are not going to have that opportunity for that kind of interpersonal interaction. But a friend of mine recently noted that in their neighborhood, a neighbor told her, her good friend, "Did you notice that that rental house has all kind of luxury cars showing up through the night,
Hmm.
and tends to be only men getting out and going into that rental property?" And then they saw some video equipment and other stuff through the window. Okay, now that stands out, right? But that's not a time to get to go John Wayne on them. That's a time to get law enforcement involved. So you can observe something out of place, but typically you're going to want to get somebody else involved to get them the help that they need. It is true that there are some that work in the juvenile realm, the children's division, family services realm, law enforcement, and healthcare professionals. They do have some legal rights to intervene. And those folks, if they've not had trafficking specific training, they need to seek it out. We partner with a group called the Human Trafficking Training Center, and they train professionals and law enforcement and others. You could reach out to them for that kind of training. Um, so there are things you can do to educate yourself. There are connections to make. And then find out if you have a victim services provider like ReHope in your area that you can refer somebody to. If you're a counselor or if you're in another field or you're just a concerned citizen, how can you support? How can you be involved and how can you refer? We get referrals from social workers, hospitals, courts, probation, addiction recovery, and drug addiction recovery programs. We get messages through Facebook and text and others. We have a crisis hotline. And so there are ways to, if you can kind of educate yourself to how to connect people and know what to do in each situation.
Yeah, no, incredibly powerful. And I guess same question, but coming from someone who might be trafficked, right? What
Yeah.
is the best way for them to be able to reach out and, sort of self-identify themselves as needing help?
Interestingly enough, often we've had out of state or from all over the country, we've had women that have been trafficked that will take a moment to get on a cafe, internet place or whatever. They can look up victim services providers like ReHope or others. They can look them up online. Doesn't take but a second and find out, and then we'll get like a chat or an email, or they'll go on our Facebook. You can go. They can go on social media and connect with a victim services provider. There are some databases that can be checked, but if they don't know any of that, they need to connect with. If they feel positive about law enforcement in their area, they can go through law enforcement. They can go to a hospital or an ER. They can go to a designated safe place. In the Midwest, in the South, and the Southwest, quick trips are designated safe places. And a child can go there and know that the manager will call the number for them and have somebody come and see how they can be helped. So there are some ready-made opportunities to connect with someone that can get them help.
Okay. And the Quick Trip, is that the name of a business or is that
Yeah, Quick Trip is a big gas station chain in the
okay.
Midwest, the Southwest, and the South. Uh, but you could go to a 7-Eleven or a Quick Trip gas station or a hospital ER or places like that and say, I need help. And then they're going to connect you to the right places. Quick Trip in particular, they have signs that say safe place. And they have connections wherever cities they are in with those that help youth and others get social service help.
Yeah. Incredibly powerful the work that you guys do and um just again giving people their life back, right? Or maybe even giving it to them for the first time. Maybe they've
Yeah.
they've never had that kind of feeling or support before. So really powerful. If people wanted to, and actually, I guess before we get into that, you're 501(c)(3), so I'm assuming you accept donations. If people wanted to,
Absolutely.
help or contribute in some way, what would be a way to be able to get involved or even just learn more?
So rehope.org is our website, and there you can find out what we do. You can learn more. You can donate. You can get involved financially or otherwise in terms of different ways to volunteer, both in person, but if you're from somewhere else, online. Starting a group to learn about human trafficking and to connect with someone like us that about how you can help, how you can be an advocate, how you can support. So all of that is a great place to start. Is just rehope.org. You can contact us to learn more. You can sign up for our newsletter list. You can help donate, but you can also find other groups in your area and do the same kind of thing. It's a simple Google search to find, where are the service providers victim services providers regarding human trafficking. You can go to the Department of Justice, Homeland Security websites. They have a lot of information on human trafficking, FBI. There is a couple groups, the National Trafficking Shelter Alliance that we're a member of, the Samaritan Women Institute for Shelter Care, Shared Hope International. These are all Polaris. These are all places that have resources, things you can learn, and they can connect you to the Safe House Project. Those that can all connect you to people that are in service provision, in prevention, in education. If you want to be a part of legislative and lobbying things, Exodus Cry and Shared Hope International are both really good at that side of things. For parents out there, you can learn and educate yourself on how to protect your children online and otherwise from predators and from traffickers and others seeking to groom them online. That's the biggest growth area, unfortunately, for traffickers to groom and to recruit. So there's a lot out there to be learned and then applied in both prevention as well as policy and as well as helping those that have been victimized be restored.
I love it. I love it. This is really, really powerful stuff, and certainly encourage any of the listeners who might be looking to get involved or might be, looking for help to take some of the resources that we talked about here today and reach out and again, participate, do your part, or, reach out and get that help that you're looking for. So really powerful message here today. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are grateful for the opportunity. And again, people can contact us through our website, rehope.org, and we can interact on any of these things or follow up with someone to get them help.
Love it. Love it. Thank you.